Hello and welcome to the Mysticast, where you join me, Jack Stafford, a student of metaphysics, as I talk to a variety of guests to better understand the teachings given by the masters through the Aetherius Society, the new cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, incorporating all yogas, Christian mysticism, theosophy, UFOs, and much, much more. Please note that this is an independent podcast, not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, my guest is Michael Scholey from the Aetherius Society in Los Angeles. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're getting to be a regular.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. The entire universe of stuff to talk about. So
literally.
yeah. So
The challenge is to narrow it down and focus on one thing each episode. And today you wanted to focus on animals, and I know you have one in your lap right there as we.
I could see that. Yes, yes. I realized that my progress has actually been helped by my cats, because I realized that now I'm able to give them unlimited love, unrestricted love. And it's something that people have to learn. They have to learn that. And if you can't give animals love, then you're certainly not going to be able to give people love.
Right.
Because animals are unjudgmental. They give you as much love as you give them, if not more. They're willing to forgive you for all sorts of things. Now, there are some people that are just such SOBs that, even the animal has a problem with them. But by and large, people, if they give love to animals, their love will be given back, and they begin to understand what it is to really love. And, I'm talking about domestic animals, obviously, though all animals do respond to love. I mean, the cosmic masters have said everything responds to love, even my computer. Which is something that I battle with sometimes. But you look at animals, and they too are learning. They too are experiencing. Everything is learning and experiencing. And you stop that. Two cats pawing each other. Come on. Right from microbes up to galaxies, they're learning, they're experiencing, they're gathering information into themselves so that they can integrate that into their particular understanding of life. As one comedy writer wrote, life, the universe, and everything. But you look at some insects, say, and you begin to see what they're learning to do. And I think bees are, you and I talked about, or wrote to each other about bees, and you were talking about drones and so on, and bumblebees. And
Venus, you said.
well, bees are from Venus, supposedly. But then what are bees learning? They're learning to live as individuals, but within the hive, within a group soul. And the group soul is something we have to keep in mind whenever we're really talking about almost anything, because, bees have, the master of George King always said that animals have a group soul. Well, human beings also have a group soul. The group soul is this world. And that's why you have world karma. because it's the group soul of humanity which is learning and experiencing. And even though the individual parts are all learning and experiencing things, and each part, like Los Angeles is learning and experiencing things, just as Italy is learning and experiencing.
So there are group souls within the group souls within the group souls.
Yeah. So the bee is independent in the fact that it goes out and collects pollen and comes back to the hive, but they live as a group soul, and their individuality is minuscule, really.
Mm. Yeah, they're
You
very
look
short
at
lives.
very short lives, yes, but they go back to the group soul.
Yes.
And then you look at slightly higher animals. Can't think of anything in between there and cats and dogs, but cats and dogs, their group soul, and the master always said they live as a group soul, and yet they are learning their individuality. In other words, they're just about to leave that group soul. And I say leave because no one ever really leaves their group soul. They're about to stress their individuality above that of the group soul. Just as human beings, they try, they do stress their individuality way above the group soul. And yet, when we die, although we are individuals and work as individuals, that's been our decision. And you look at let's say, I mean, you look at the Master Aetherius. They say, well, you go back and you join up with others that are like-minded to form a larger entity. So in a way, we come from this group soul of insects and animals and so on, and to gain different experiences, we break free of that group soul, and yet we're not really free of it. We're just thinking we're independent.
But do you think like the group soul of the bees evolves into the next level up? So a bee is made of a cat is made of could be made of a hive of bees, for example.
Well, it would be more than a hive of bees. I mean, it would be a whole raft of bees, more like thousands of hives in a way. What are you doing?
Because in body weight, there are more insects on the world.
Well,
So
I mean,
does it work in that?
body weight, and doesn't really come into it.
But, they evolve up into less and less and more
Yes,
concentration.
they evolve too, and I couldn't really say, how the individual evolves to greater and greater things. It's a little difficult to say, but you look at cats and dogs, and they are individuals, and yet George King said that they really belong to a group soul. In other words, their information is pooled to that group soul, even though as individuals they have their own understanding, experience, knowledge is amassed in them. And then, of course, you get to human beings who are even more individuals, even though we're still part of a group soul.
There was one scientist called Rupert Sheldrake. He came up with this theory called morphic resonance because
Yeah.
they did, if an animal learns something on one side of the planet, and all the other animals learn, like the blue tits, if they learn to drink the milk, or rats learn a particular way through a maze, then without them, that's knowledge goes into the group soul,
Yes.
and then they learn all over the
Yes.
world.
Yes. I don't know about all over the world, but certainly I know it happens within areas. In other words, yeah, the blue tits learning to drink from the top of milk bottles. I mean, when it started, it quickly sort of went out throughout the British Isles. I don't know whether, I'm not well enough versed in what animals live where, but I'm not sure whether there are blue tits on the continent or whether they would have learned. But yeah, in other words, it quickly goes within the
Yeah.
small area, and then it gradually infiltrates out into the entire world. Or now that it's George King always said that man made the animals. Well, animals were on this earth long before man was, and so exactly who made animals like Tyrannosaurus Rex and so on. It's something that's an aspect of God was implanted into a little machine, an insect or a bacteria or something, and that then has the pressure from God to create itself into something greater. So it expands and it becomes an insect, and then it becomes maybe a bird and so on. So there's a pressure from God to gain greater and greater experience. And that pressure is not only from behind us, but is pulling us back towards God as well. It's an interesting concept.
So karma is pressure, but karma is
Yeah,
not what manifests.
yeah, but the pressure is also to learn what you're supposed to learn in the position you're in, but then to learn greater and greater things. So you may decide to, or it may decide to adopt a larger, more complex animal form
Mm.
in order to learn greater and greater things. So you look at an insect and it's learning fairly simple things, really. And then you look at, a small animal, a mouse, for instance, it's learning to survive. It's learning fear, maybe. It's learning maybe a bit of happiness. It has simple emotions, but they're there, they're still there. And
Mm.
he's learning to control those. It's learning to, if it fights with another mouse, it's learning something from that
Mm.
condition. Um, and the more you look at it and try to understand it, the more fascinating it becomes.
Mm. So we never go backwards, because some of the Buddhists, for example, or know many people, when they speak about reincarnation, they get confused, and are we going back into animals? And that couldn't happen. That's impossible. Yeah.
Well, I know that some people, I won't totally poo-poo that, because I think that some people may decide to re-experience that.
Okay.
for some reason, and I don't know the reason. I've just been reading this book about this animal communicator, and she says that this dog that she had and received a lot of wisdom from, he said that, or it said that it had been a Buddhist monk at one point. And if you look at what the master said about ascension, that if you've missed out on something, you cannot get to ascension if you've missed out on some, you may have advanced completely, but then if you missed out on something, you have to go back and experience that, because that's part of your experience that you missed out on for some reason.
Wow.
So it
Never miss a lesson.
That's right. Yeah, never miss a lesson. So it may be that this Buddhist monk missed out on something as a dog. That's speculation, and I can't say that it's true or false or anything, but from what I see and what I hear and read and so on about people and animal communications and so on, it's a possibility.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, the exception that proves the rule.
yeah.
It's not a common
But
occurrence, though, is it? I mean, usually
I don't.
everyone's going down towards the sea. We're all going back towards. We're all flowing in one
We're all
direction.
flowing towards our group soul,
Hmm.
so that the group soul of humanity can go forwards. And we are supposed to bring all the rest of the animals and insects and everything else up with us towards interplanetary existence.
Hmm.
The masters say we don't have animals as such on our planet, and we have very limited plant forms, but they're experiencing things as well, and they're being brought forwards. Because if you go back to the beginning, we were all energy beings, and it was just that some decided to take on physical format, what we call physical format, in order to gain more direct experience of manipulating material things.
Oh, you mean like the divas?
Well, the divas, they decided to just advance through manipulating the energy that mankind was putting out. And I'm sure the divas were there when we were still energy beings, but when we decided to become physical beings or go into physical, then the divas had even more work to do, because and as an energy being, you can easily manipulate energy, but as a physical being, it's a little bit more difficult.
Hmm.
Um,
I
and
remember
maybe the Adamic man that was here, maybe they manipulated energy through say dinosaurs. In other words, they almost like a toy that you would have. In other words, they would be able to manipulate the dinosaur to do things, and that was their experience of physical manipulation. Whereas we decided to do direct physical manipulation by immersing ourselves into physical.
Oh, I'm in over my head here, Michael.
No, not really. Yeah, think about it. I mean, you've got to.
Dinosaurs are weird, so somebody was definitely doing some experience work there.
Oh yeah, but then by being apart from them, it enabled you to experience physicality without having the forgetfulness that physicality gives. In other words, when we come down into a physical form, we forget
Mm.
our
Astral.
most of what we've learned, and it gradually seeps in to our mind some of what we learned, and you can and when you learn it again, you can say, oh, I remember that. Yes, I did know that.
Mm.
I mean, that's what
That's where the
I
truth resonates. Isn't it?
yeah. I mean, when I and people in the society chastise me for saying this, but mantras live within me. But when I started to realize they lived within me, I also realized that I had known these in a previous life, but I'd forgotten them.
Mm.
And it was only after many years of practicing and going through understanding more and more things, when it suddenly came back to me, and I thought, oh, I remember this. Yeah, I remember this in a previous life. And it was sort of, where have I been for 50, 60 years?
Do you remember any more details, or just the general feeling that you?
No, it just came to me that you knew this, you'd just forgotten it. And that's the trouble. I mean, you're sent into life with a certain understanding. It's not like animals that basically are sent into life within what we call an instinctual understanding of what they're supposed to do. They're sent into life with a far better understanding of what a dog is, or what a cat is, or what a mouse is, or anything like that, than human beings are, which is why human beings basically take 20 years to grow up.
Mm.
Whereas they figure a cat in 1 year is like a 20-year-old human being.
Does it reach that point of self-consciousness that the dog knows that you are, but you know that? What does Dr. King say? That I know that I am, but it doesn't know that it is.
Well, he says that, but I'm not from what I'm not absolutely sure that that's necessarily true. By and large, the dog will think it is cold rather than I am cold.
Mm.
But it also has self-awareness, because if it does something that it knows is wrong, you can very often see in the dog's face that it knows that what it did was wrong. And so it is developing
That's interesting. Yeah.
self-awareness. And they do experiments to see whether animals are self-aware, and they find that a lot of animals are self-aware. They may not use that self-awareness all the time, whereas a human being tends to use itself, for better or worse,
Mm.
and sometimes for worse, it uses that self-awareness most of the time. I often think that this is an aspect of God, because you think about it, God is one entity,
Hmm. The eternal simple.
the eternal simple. But then human beings think that they are the one. You look at how people operate, and you're walking down the aisle at the supermarket, and there's someone standing in the middle of the road, and you think, you say, "Excuse me," and this is, huh? What? I mean, didn't they realize that there are other human beings in the world? They're just standing there. I'm here. Ah, and sort of then you interrupt their reverie by saying, "Excuse me, I'm here also." And they're sort of, what do you want? And there's a sort of, and I think this is a dichotomy that they're getting closer to understanding their link with God, and yet it's being used as a sort of, well, I am, and who are these other people?
Mhm. I think
If
Dr. King
I
said
am,
that moment of cosmic consciousness is you get the moment of loneliness or something,
yes,
that
yeah,
terrible loneliness, because if you're the only one, it's lonely. But then you
yeah,
rise above that
yeah,
and you realize there's everything.
yeah, yeah. But it's and animals are like this as well. I mean, they stand in the doorway and you try to get past them, and they're sort of, huh, what?
But going back to dogs, another Dr. King gave another analogy with dogs, that the decision between free will versus freedom is that if a dog is good, it has all the freedom in the world. You'll take it in the back of the car, you take it to the into the
Oh
into the.
yeah,
But if it chooses its own free will and bites everyone who goes near it and shits all over the carpet, it has a very limited life. I always
yeah,
thought that was a very good analogy.
yeah. But a lot of that comes down to training and making the dog understand how it's supposed to live within society.
Right.
And if you, I mean, one of my cats, I have three cats now, and I just a few months ago adopted it from Leslie, this one cat, and the cat was used to crap all over a carpet, and it had a very liquid crap.
Oh,
So the previous owner was always very concerned about her, and he suggested that I take it over because with two cats then, she would be much more welcome, whereas she was living in a house where she was basically or apartment where she was basically alone, except that
and she
uh,
copied the other cats maybe as well.
well, yeah, but now I, put up with pooping for 3 months and so on until she got settled and, understood that this was her new home. And then I took her to the vet and we did some analysis and so on. And I've been slowly working on her and, trying to make her understand that, this is, I love her and this, that, and the other and so on. And now she doesn't she's slowly gotten away from crapping on the carpet and crapping on the thing. So the last couple of days, she doesn't appear to have crapped on the carpet, but she she is beginning to understand. And I think she was just stressed out at where she was previously, and now she's beginning to relax and so on. And with the things the vet has given her and what I give her and the special diet and so on, her crap is actually becoming solid, which is good. But the thing is, this is me helping her to grow up, as it were, understand more, experience more. She too has to advance. All my cats have to advance, and I hope that all of them do. And I know, some of them that have passed on, they have been extremely glad. Maybe this was just their karma to have been with me when they knew that this was, this person was going to give them love, affection, security, a home that they will be able to look back on and say, I enjoyed that life. And this is what even human beings, I mean, this is universal. The animal has to look back and say, I enjoyed that life. I got a good experience out of it.
It makes you wonder, though, because we have to be born always as babies, and through the womb, we go through all our incarnations as a fish, as a mammal,
Yeah.
and do it again. And we have to learn to walk again every time. I mean, all the time, we have to keep every life again and again. The basics, the basics. I mean,
Mhm.
it's frustrating.
Yes, but that's the way we decided that we would gain experience. In other words, we would have to relearn all the stuff that we'd had before. You look at Mars Sector 6, it describes in the Nine Freedoms, interplanetary being is born through the logos of the planet, and it has all its experiences within itself. In other words, it doesn't have to go through this babyhood relearning stuff. It can take all its experience there, and when it reconstitutes its body, all its experience is there, and it's just reconstituting the body at that level of existence. And this is the way we've chosen to live.
It was a bad
This
choice.
is part of our free will. Yeah. We decided that free will, we would experience physicality directly.
Some people are on their. Some people must be walking. I must pass people on the street who are on their first life, and some people are on their.
Well, I don't know about their first life. It may look like that.
I drive behind some people who are on their first life. I swear to you.
Yeah, I know. They've never been in a car before, have they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. They, people, no, and I haven't been able to find the quote, but the master Aetherius says you are 6 million billion years old or something, but you don't realize it. And so we've all had thousands of lives before. It's just how much have we learned? And some people just seem to free willfully desire not to learn. And yet other people are, they want to learn. They soak up learning. They want more and more and more learning, and that shows that they're getting somewhere. Because even though in their free will they may not use that learning correctly, they will just have to learn how to use it correctly, either in this life or in the next life. And this comes back to you and your question about reincarnation, where we choosing our parents, and that, yeah, it's the vibration of each individual parent and the vibration that comes through those parents from their ancestors. You with your higher self look into maybe the Akashic records, but maybe just when you've made your life decision as to what you're going to do in the next life, what you're going to try and learn, what you're going to try and experience, you look for vibrations that will satisfy that. And your higher self, you see, is connected to this group soul. And it just as Mars Sector 6 said, we know about everyone that has been on this planet, everyone that is on this planet, and everyone that is going to be on this planet. So, it's not it's not beyond the wild possibility that they can look and say, okay, that vibration and that vibration will combine into you to give you the experience you want. And it may be that it takes a bit of jiggery pokery to get those two vibrations together so that you can be what you want to be, or what you want to experience. But then, okay, sometimes those two vibrations may be almost incompatible vibrations when you look at the rate of divorce and what people do to each other, and people that grow up in broken homes and so on, and yet some people that grow up in broken homes, they turn out to be wonderful people. They've learned from that experience, and it's mind-boggling when you really think about what has to happen. And you look at people, they get divorced and they get married to somebody else, and this experience mixing, and uh, the different people getting the different experiences is I mean, this is more than a fruit tart. This is a
because
complete Christmas pudding. Everything's in there.
because you go through the thinking with metaphysics. Let me just try and explain that. So what I was thinking originally was that because God is everything, yeah,
Yeah,
God is
yeah.
and manifests as karma, the law of karma. So, but this has to be some supercomputer, no, to understand, to do everything. I mean, if there's a multi-car pileup on the motorway, and all these different live streams get the karma that's coming to them. Now, is it that God, the supercomputer, does all this, or is it, as you said, that all our actions are delegated to the lowest possible level so that maximum karma can be manipulated? Like if there's a storm, for example, I know that there'll be divas inside the storm, and there'll probably many divas working for the one diva. So is it, and the divas work, open the flowers, and then there's a diva for the valley, and then this. So does it work with reincarnation that there's an administrative system working around it? I mean, does the Lord of Karma oversee it, and then is it taken down to a practical level with spirit guides, just taking you to meet it, and then having a meeting, and then going to another office, and then, or is it a son of this all-knowing being that's moving everything?
I mean, in our system of uh, reincarnation, we go on to the halls of judgment on Saturn. Well, the Saturnians, or at least the perfects of Saturn, are lords of karma. So, and then there is the karmic board on Saturn. And somewhere down the line there, you are guided as to what you're going to do in your next life. Once you have been guided onto your next life, exactly how far down the hierarchy, shall we say, goes in order to find your parents, I don't know.
Mm.
It, obviously the hierarchy has to, shall we say, sign off, just as you have to sign off on what you're going to experience. And it's your higher self guiding your, I won't say not necessarily lower self, but your soul as to what it has to experience through a body. And
So there are these definite cogs. It's not that not that we're spirit clouds floating through and then drifting as energy forms to this thing and that in this pools of spirit world. There are actual cogs.
well, yeah, I mean, each level kind of controls the level below, and so um, it's like a railway system. Somebody at the top
Mhm.
decides what will happen, and then the people
Right.
down below decide that, okay, in this area we will do this, and then there's a signalman pulling the signals and so on, and then it comes down to the driver and the train.
So as above, as
So,
below.
yeah, I mean, it's in
It's a
a
big
way,
question. I don't
you
really,
know,
I'm gonna be
you know,
honest. You don't
yeah,
have to answer this, Michael. This is the
in a way, it's better not to think about it, just
yeah.
because
Well,
it
I'm
gets
putting you on the
your mind so wrapped up in it, and I mean, it you get the general picture.
Hmm.
That,
But it's important to understand because it does. If we know, we spend so much time on the astral plane, then we come here to forget all about it and not understand it. Is if we understand these mechanisms, then we should live a much better life here.
well, yes, but it was part of our free will that we would descend into matter and forget all that we'd
Yeah.
learned, or most of what we'd learned. Um, so we have to relearn it all the time. Um, but then, we are guided, and there are spirit guides that do guide us if we allow ourselves to be
Mm.
guided. Um, I was, I think most people were guided into the Aetherius Society. Most people are guided into something that they need to experience. And you get the occasional person that they look back and sort of almost don't understand how on earth it was they were guided.
Mm.
I know one person, they were a Buddhist, grew up sort of non-practicing Jewish. Then they became a Buddhist, and then they became an atheist, and then they were plunked into the Aetherius Society. And they sort of look back and think, how on earth did that happen?
Or maybe they were going as a reborn baby, working to walk as a teenager. Maybe they did. Maybe they're also living their past lives in a condensed.
I don't know.
Because this is the
But
quickening, so maybe.
yeah, but then I always liken it to St. Paul. As Saul of Tarsus, he was violently against the Christians. And then, a higher entity decided, oh, we can use you. So zap on the road to Damascus, and there he was. Then he became Saint Paul,
Mm.
or at least what we know of as Saint Paul, because he was of use.
Yeah.
And I think that's very often the case that people will have decided that a certain life, and they do understand that this will happen later on in their life, but sometimes it takes the zap to wake them up to what they're really supposed to do.
But
And
one of the reasons I ask about the process is because we are studying all these teachings that Dr. King has left for us, and one of the recent ones that came out was from the member audio series was a visit to the Great White Brotherhood retreat in Scott in the Cairngorms. He went
yeah,
into the mountain, and there's one center for the Great White Brotherhood where they study all the great religions of the world, all the religious spiritual societies, and they keep records on them. So that's a job of ascended masters. I mean, I would, if I was ascended master, I'd be disappointed. I mean, I didn't know in the 9 readings it goes, enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, ascension, data entry.
mm-hmm.
I'd
Well,
be.
I must say, the poor people have to keep a tabs on all the religions of the world. I'm sure there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth in there. You know,
And they can't interfere.
no, they can't interfere. You know, they sort of, but then I won't say they interfere, but they can probably send impulses to influence.
Mm,
In other words, they can guide the evolving church, say,
mm,
to a better understanding. I mean, let's face it, in the Middle Ages, Christianity was a warlike group.
oh yes,
The Pope sent them to murder some Muslims around the world, and they went out to South America and promptly murdered a bunch of people. I mean, this was Christianity, so
Mm,
called. But then, where Christianity is beginning to be eased back into the understanding that you that's not the way to be.
mm,
Now, Islam is, at least within it, it has the same influence that I think influenced Christianity in the Middle Ages. In other words, it's warlike, um, kill everybody that doesn't agree with you. Some segments, anyway.
mm.
And
Christianity did
it
that for
has,
sure, yeah.
yeah, Christianity did that, and Islam is doing it, or at least in some parts of it, is doing that right now. Um, and they have to overcome it.
But just the reason I
They-
was mentioning the Great World Authority is because that administrative system, if that's something ascended masters do, and that's just a fragment that we know about, there's and the spaceship satellite number 3 has, knows about everything and everyone on the earth, and all these other there are whole because when you think about it as a spiritual person, you say there's the Akashic records, and then all the masters have to do is open their mind and open a page of the Akashic records. But here we see that ascended masters are recording actual film, uh, making digital files, so they're not just pulling down. And they had these discs. Have you ever seen one of these discs that Dr. King mentions that can float into the room and film the?
no, I haven't.
So they have these remote controlled eyes
I was
that go.
probably concentrating on something else.
So they have these eyes that go in and film. So there's
Well, yeah,
must be this
yeah,
karmic reason they have to do it. Instead of just
but
pulling it down from the realms. The Akashic.
yeah, because they are part of this world, and they have decided to be part of this world, remain part of this world. So they are restricted by what this world is doing.
Comes back
In
to
other
govern.
words,
Yeah.
it, there's you can float up to the ceiling, but you can't get any further than the ceiling
Mm,
until you decide to leave that room and go to the next room.
okay.
Then you have a vast vista and capabilities that you weren't allowed to have in that room, shall we say.
Okay.
So even though they're ascended masters, they're restricted by what is allowed within this world room. Does that
Mhm.
make
Makes
sense?
sense. Yeah, because
So, so,
karma is the answer to
so,
everything.
so they have to do things in primitive ways
Right.
because they're not allowed to access the more advanced ways.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So think of a question. Are we high enough for you yet?
No, no,
you
no.
you wanted to go on further than this,
So, because you mentioned about the initial drive from bacteria to microbes, insects to fish, to animals and humans, and I've been reading the stanzas of Dazan from Madame Blavatsky, the secret doctrines, just to
Mm.
I could just read us one small part of it, just to see how grateful we are to have the nine freedoms, because this is what its theosophy is based on, and it's very abstract. So let me just read one small part. The spark hangs from the flame by the finest thread of thought. It journeys through the seven worlds of Maya. It stops in the first kingdom and is a metal and a stone. It passes into the second kingdom, and behold, a plant. The plant whirls through seven forms. It becomes a sacred animal, the first shadow of the physical man. From the combined attributes of these Manu, man, the thinker is formed. Who forms him? The seven lives and the one life. Who completes him? The fivefold La. And who perfects the last body? Fish, Sin, and Soma, the moon. Yeah, so
That's, the problem with all these things are, and my doctor happened to be saying that he started to, because he's a Hindu, he started to reread the Upanishads, and I read them, and I understood part of them, and I realized that I could understand most of them if I, sat and thought about them. But that's the thing. You had to really sit and think about these things, and they're so
abstract.
I always say they're Victorian, because the Victorians had a way of saying things which to us is convoluted, and what you just read was actually a very understandable Victorianism,
Mm.
in the fact that I could easily see what they were trying to get at. But so often it's not until you read the Nine Freedoms or the 12 Blessings that you realize what they're trying to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
at, because it's so straightforward and understandable. And the Upanishads, I would every now and again run into some part of it, and they were trying to describe God or the absolute. And I thought, uh, the 12th blessing is so much more understandable than this.
Mm.
And yet it is saying the same thing. I mean, in one point, the Upanishad said, it is the sea. And that's
Oh yeah,
what we have in the 12
12
blessings, at
blessings.
least
Yeah.
the translation that I was reading, obviously. And, but so often these things, they're true, but they're just so convoluted that you would have to sit down and really think about it, and almost go into meditation in order to understand it. And
Madame
yet that
Blavatsky Madame Blavatsky in the book, she quotes a Kabbalistic aphorism: "A stone becomes a plant a beast, the beast a man a spirit, and the spirit is God." I quote.
yeah, well, that's pretty straightforward,
Yeah,
actually. I mean, that's isn't that what we've just been talking about in
yeah,
a way?
but it's true when you read
uh,
the Nine Freedoms. You
Yeah,
realize.
yeah. Well, the Nine Freedoms is basically trying to get us from where we are
Mm.
up to back to God, or on the way back to God. So, whereas Blavatsky is talking about the initial impulse and how it grows out to where we are, and and that's interesting, obviously.
Mm.
But it's just like the Buddha didn't describe anything beyond nirvana,
Mm.
which to us would be, um, I suppose, interplanetary existence, because he was just trying to get people started,
Mm.
and so they didn't need to know anything more than that. Now we're at a certain point. We're shown a roadmap of so much more. In other words, you it's like a treasure hunt. Where you're given instructions. All right, you go from this pub to down to the crossroads, and you take the sender thing, and so on and so on and so forth. And then you will arrive at a phone booth and look for more instructions there, and you So you're only given as much instruction as you can understand.
Right.
And then when you get to that point, you're given more instructions. And so now we just happen to have been blessed with the instruction of this is where you go from here all the way to back to God again. So
Because the Buddha also, he remembered being a stone, and Madame Blavatsky here says that after a sevenfold gyration encased in the stone, or that which become mineral and stone in the fourth round, it creeps out of it, say, as a lichen. So it's the life comes first out of stone, and then it's
yeah. I mean, it's we understand this, but then this is why they say, you have to spiritualize all mass. You have to spiritualize everything. And it's easiest to do it with plants and animals and so on than it is to do it with stone. Stone, you kind of think, well, I'm going to have to leave up to
but stone evolves into
the Mother
crystals
Earth.
and
Yeah,
there's
I'm
many
going to have to
stages of
leave.
stone. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's where the Mother Earth comes in, I think, because her influence is pushing the life force within that stone to grow and become greater. I think, because
That's not,
it's
it's weird.
certainly not up to us. I don't think.
But it's interesting because I was reading this and it really opened, just this one line opened my mind after reading the Ninth Readings, and also the way the Mother Earth evolves and the way we evolve. It says, goes on about the second round brought forth the elements of fire and air. Then it says the third round is element is water, and the fourth round added earth. And she says, the nature is never stationary during Manvantara, as it is ever becoming, not simply being, and mineral, vegetable, and human life are always adapting their organisms to the then reigning elements, and therefore those elements were then fitted for them, as they are now the life of present humanity. It will only be in the next round or fifth round that the fifth element, ether, the gross body of Akka, if it can be called even that, will become, by becoming a familiar fact of nature to all men, as air is familiar to us now. So just when we go into interplanetary existence, we don't need air; we can live in ether.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to be a long way from interplanetary existence because even when when the new age arrives, although we will transcend our physicality, I'm not quite sure whether we will then be ready to go into full interplanetary existence. I think we've got a lot of advancement still to do before we get to that point. In other words,
Is that also because of
that
the
we're-
cosmic of the initiation of the solar system has raised it to even a higher level, perhaps?
yeah, I mean, once we free ourselves of the gross physical body and are not held back by the influence of the lower astrals, that you can look around the world and see tremendous influence of the lower astrals. I think we will advance very quickly because, it's like trying to run a mile with a jailer's ball attached to your leg. It's very, very difficult. But once that ball is taken off, then you can really move.
Right.
And
But
but
it
we
did
have
give
to
me it
get
did
to
give me
that
an
point.
insight into this because I understand, the scientists know we used to live in water. We evolved from
Mm,
living in
mm,
water,
mm.
and on other like Garush, they live on water, and so they must. I was thinking, they must have spaceships that are filled with water, and they just everything as we take in water maybe 30 times a day. They must take in air 30 times a day, for example, and it's
Well, I mean, they're just you look at a fish, and that's how they live. They live in water, and there's air obviously in the aerated
mm,
water, and they just take it in and filter it out and so on. So Garush would have done exactly the same things.
mm.
Um, then
But I
you
was just
get,
thinking how we go through. So we've been in water, we know that we're living in air now, and then in interplanetary existence, we live without air. We know that, but then I just that took me to how you can live in the ninth freedom on the sun. It just you're in another element, but it's not such a great leap for me now as it was before after I read that, because now I can
yeah,
understand that you just exist in fire. That's that's
yeah. I mean, uh, whatever existence you or whatever physical area you were brought up in, that's what you live in. So a fish lives in water, a bird lives in air.
yeah,
It- it's if you were brought up in an Amazonian tribe that still lives what we would call a Stone Age existence, that's what you live in.
yeah.
If you're brought up with a computer, that's the way you live because that's
You
just the way it
you vibrate
is.
that.
So, when scientists say, oh, well, they couldn't live on this, we couldn't live on that because there's not the same elements and physicality that we exist in, it's a bit silly
Mm,
because if you were brought up on a nitrogen world, you would live on a nitrogen world, and
yeah.
that would be the way you would live because that's the way you were.
Because, like, if on Saturn there's no solid ground, but there are temples there, I just I was thinking, I probably told people that, yeah, at our frequency of vibration, the Saturn is gaseous, but another vibration, it might be physical, but probably I was wrong to say that because it could be gaseous at all levels, but the temples are just in it exist on that as you could build a house in fire if you lived on the sun in some way.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
it's just
yeah,
it's far beyond my understanding, basically.
you just, I mean, if it depends on what level you're on in Saturn, just as it depends on what level you're on in this world. If you're on this physical level, you build a house, with bricks and mortar or wooden plaster. If you're on a higher realm, you build it out of thought. You build it with the materials that are available to you, which are energy in a certain form. As you go higher and higher and higher, you're still building things, but you're building it in a different way. So on Saturn, they have these temples which are built or brought into being by mind thought, but then it exists on that level.
Right.
But to our level, it doesn't exist.
Mm.
There's they talk about Venus and the temples they have there and so on. And we look at Venus and it's completely alien to our environment. But then to a Venusian, it's a wonderful environment because this is what they've been brought up in. you
But
know,
we don't see the
Uh,
astrals on this earth, so,
no,
we're
no.
blind to things right here.
When you go to the sun, you think, there's no point. You're existing as an energy being, to us, an energy being, sending out your energy to the solar system as a whole,
But
and
it's
that's your purpose in life, as it were.
yeah.
W- You know,
But it's also funny that we go through these I was thinking about the planets, so we go through these rounds in our level, we exist in the elements, but then maybe after the 9 freedoms, we exist as the elements because the Earth is Earth, yeah, and then Saturn is the most involved planet, but it's gaseous, and then you exist as the logos of Earth, as the fire. Maybe
yes, but
that's all.
but think how many even sun. You think of them as they describe them as entities.
Mm.
You become part of the sun. But think how many of those have to combine to form a planetary logos.
Right.
So, you're always combining
Money, yeah.
as you get back. In other words, you start off with, I won't say individuality, but aspects of a group soul, because the group soul has to push the drive which causes its individual aspects to advance, like an army.
Mm.
The army has the group soul, but the individual aspects have to push forward to become, so the army becomes greater, so that the army, and then the individual aspects will become great enough that they can become above that army group soul, become, people in charge of the army in a way.
You, you said like the Master
Well,
Aetherius was many millions of years old because he was combined souls.
billions, he said. So, I mean, because billions of years of experience.
Relentless
That's the thing,
experience.
you
Yeah.
see, because if each individual aspect of him has had millions of years of experience, then, if 1,000 of them, then that becomes 1 billion,
Yeah.
So, and you have, and he has access. I say he's almost an it because, um, because he is so many, there must be female entities in there as well.
Oh yeah. And the neither.
Yeah, and so altogether he has billions of years of experience, and he has each individual part has access to all that experience. And that's the amazing thing, really. But then, you look at God itself, the absolute itself, it has access to every single aspect of experience, which is experienced by every single part of itself. And every single part of itself is everything. I mean, it just, I mean, it boggles the imagination almost. And yet,
Then you get like the perfects of Saturn, they merge together and then they flower and then they divide again into all these other different parts to gain experience simultaneously. And
yeah, because everything has to gain experience. And the whole point is to gain all experience so that when you go back to God, you know everything. And then when you know everything, you realize that you are God, and that was it. In other words, uh, I'm just trying to remember the poet that I have this quote from him, and he talks about we shall, gain experience and experience, and we shall gain more experience until we get back to where we started from and realize what it was, that you've understood it all the way. In other words,
I wish I just knew it now. I mean, if it's that simple.
well, I mean, poets try and make things simple, really. But I thought, that's incredibly profound because that's what we're doing.
Mm.
We're exploring, experiencing things so that the more we experience, the more we understand. And when we understand everything, we realize we've been here all along.
Yeah.
We haven't gone anywhere. We've just finally realized that we are.
Well, I guess we're all experiencing everything we need to right now. And because if we didn't need this lesson right now, this conversation we're having, we would just have bypassed it. Yeah, we wouldn't be doing this. So
Well, yeah, I mean, but this is part of our experience at
Yeah.
our level and our existence. And the more we experience things and the more we understand things, and that's the key. You have to understand them.
Mm.
In other words, we talked last time about psychic things, and you have to understand them. If you just pass them off as, well, whatever,
Mm.
then you're not going to understand them. But the more you understand them, the more it happens. And the more you understand about life, the universe, and everything, the more it will happen, the more you will go on because, um, it's like your driver on the motorway. They you look at them and you think, is this the first time they've ever been on the motorway or the freeway? And, they're not understanding things, and they've got to experience and experience and experience. And hopefully then they will understand it. And once they understand it, then they can go on and do other things.
It was a good because we exist in a sea of mind and we are mind and everything is mind. There was a good quote from Dr. King I saw about that we only have individual mind because we've grasped some aspect of mind and lodged it there. But that is not the only mind that exists. And it's not
Yeah,
the only
yeah.
individual mind as such. It's your individual mind. So I'm speaking to you and I'm lodging extra bits of mind in my mind.
Well,
So
that's what I say, that we're all part of a group soul.
mm,
See, it's just that we think we are much more individual than we actually are.
right.
We make ourselves individual, whereas a dog or a cat is individual, but it
Mm,
also understands within it, understands not understands on this level, but understands way above its level. When it goes back, it becomes part of the group soul again, and it learns from that group soul. In other words, it's far more attached to its group soul than we are. We're thinking that we should be individuals. But then you look at, if one person tried to build a skyscraper, they wouldn't advance very far. So you get the group soul and the
right.
construction workers together, and they quickly build a skyscraper.
But one person has
That's
the ideas.
that's
Yeah.
that's the difference. Yeah, one person has the idea maybe, but then that group soul together can do far, far more than just one person. And this is where we cut ourselves off in a way
Yeah.
by desiring this gross individuality, that we cut ourselves off from the force of the group soul.
Right. And he says your individual mind differs only from the individual mind of your brothers and sisters because it differs in sensitivity and ability for reception, output, and retention. So he says if you're in a room, got a room full of people, and maybe one of them's, Charles Dickens or Wordsworth or Tesla, because they've trained their brain to receive the highest impulses of mind,
Mm, mm.
whereas you haven't, the dog or the cat hasn't trained their radio to receive that.
Yeah, I think the dogs and cats, because I think they use their group soul far more than we do. In other words, I think they're
Right.
more attached to it, or they can be more attached to it. From what I can, animal communicators, they, the dog or the cat is far more understanding of its aspect in a group soul. So it has access to more understanding than we would normally give it credit for. But it's learning, and it's downloading its information into that group soul as it's learning. But then that's the same all over the world, or in the entire universe. Every single one of us learns something, and the group soul, the absolute, learns it immediately. So we learn something and the absolute learns it. But that was the whole point. That's the whole point of creation, that the absolute wasn't able to observe itself, because it was it, and that was all of it, and there was nothing outside of it. So it decided, all right, let me distribute things and they can observe me from inside, so that then it can understand, each individual part can understand what it is, and then it can feed back to me so that I can understand what I am.
Well, I think I've advanced enough today, Mike. But
You think so? Your
yeah.
dinner calls, huh?
I think if I advance too much, it could be dangerous for the equilibrium of humanity, and I might not be able to. I might stabilize the
but
current
it's
group soul.
but the more you understand, the more fascinating it gets. The more you see the interrelationship of everything, and the more you begin to, with animals, I see them as helpers. I mean, they're there to help us, and yet we're there to help them. The trouble with human beings is that they think they're there for themselves, and they're not. They're there for everybody else. And that's why the masters emphasize service to others. This is the way you will advance, by giving service. In other words, if you cut yourself off and say that I'm going to do it my way, then you become like Satan. Everything for myself. But if you do it the master's way, giving service to others, the more you give away, the more you get back. And that surely is the lesson of the teachings. You advance because when you give stuff away, you're creating this vacuum, and God abhors a vacuum. So it pushes stuff back into you. The more you push away, the more you get back into yourself. The more you build up others, the more you get back into yourself. This is the essence of service. And even if you give to animals, even if you give to plants, even if you give to the rocks and so on, if you're giving things away unselfishly, I mean, if you give something and think, all right, I've got to get something back from that, then you're not really, the motive is wrong. But if you give stuff away and you say, I'm giving this away because I want to, because I want to help other people. I want to help the animals. I want to help people understand things. I'm giving it all away. Then you will get so much back again, because you're creating this vacuum in a way within yourself. In other words, you're giving this information away, and so more and more information will be given back to you, maybe from other people, maybe from the higher aspects. But that is the only way to advance. That way you will be greater and greater and greater and greater without even trying. And that's what they say. They say give service and Kundalini will rise in an unforced fashion. In other words, you're not desiring it. You're saying, I must help my other people, must help other people, I must help the world, I must help the animals and so on. And so information will be given to you because that's the way of the universe. The more you give that which you have, those that have, it shall be given to them. But they have because they give it away to other people. And so therefore it shall be given to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the more, because yeah, once I've learned something, I move on to something else. And once I get an idea, if I don't act on it, I don't get another idea I found. But if I act on the idea, like I clear the tubes, then something else will
Yeah,
come.
yeah, yeah.
And
But by helping other people, and if you get information, if I get information, I want to give it to other people.
yeah,
And that's an impulse in me. Some people, they get information, and I've seen this in the society, they get the information and they want to clutch it to themselves, and they say,
mystery schools, you know.
I've got information, I'll let you have it if, and I'm saying, I've got information here, look, here it is, isn't it exciting, isn't it wonderful, and I mean, to me, it's just, let's share this, let's all,
Mm,
but that's what they're telling us. What you have, give it away,
mm,
then you will have more. When you have more, give it away, and you will have even more. And you give it, and you give it, and you give it, and you don't want it back. You want them to use it. You want them to advance. You want them to help. But then if you think about it, if everybody on the world was doing that, all right, you get that people, and I always think of myself, well, if everyone's giving it away, then, or if I'm giving everything away and nobody else is giving anything away, then I'm totally bereft,
yeah,
but then if everyone was giving to everybody else, all right, you have to look after yourself as well. But when everybody's giving it away, imagine how much more the world would be if everyone was saying, how can I help you? How can I help you? You look in African countries, and for some reason, and it's difficult to know why, they're backward, but they're not backward because they're intellectually backward. Something is holding them back. Very often it's their government. But, I see these things every now and again on the BBC and so on. And there was this one guy that their village was way, out in the bush somewhere. And they had oxyacetylene acetylene lamps and so on. And they weren't going to be served on the grid because, they were way too far out in the countryside. So he essentially dug up old parts of cars and bicycles and whatever, and made this uh, generator, which generated electricity from running water. And now the whole village is lit up. And as a result, everyone is advancing because they can read at night, they can do things at night, they can, do productive things at night. So everybody's advancing. But that's because one individual gave away what he had created. In other words, he gave away the electricity and so on, and now he's progressing and going to other villages and so on. And you think that's the way you progress, because somebody has an idea, gets people to help him maybe, if necessary, and then everybody will benefit. But if he'd said, well, I'm going to light my house and to heck with the rest of the people, it wouldn't have benefited anyone. Matter of fact, they'd have probably come and clubbed him to death because he was doing something that, was selfish. And, people have to do this. There's a different one. See the different
Raise all the boats.
different type of tail. um, but that's the essence of service. You give to other people, and you get so much more back, and you advance, and you help them advance. And then if they see you giving to them, then they think, oh, well, I better do something, So I better do something for, not necessarily for that person who's given to me, but to other people as well. And so it grows. And this is the essence of life, service to others.
I guess that giving out love and getting back more is the essence of the 12 blessings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The essence of the 9 freedoms as well. And they said, you never get anything unless you give out, or you don't get something for nothing.
Mm.
The sun gives out radiations to us, gives out energy to us, and the galaxy sends energy out to it to replenish it, and continuing all the way up. But then, the absolute is the one that sends out the energy to all of us anyway. And do we get it directly from the absolute, or do we get it via a long chain of commands?
Digested down.
Yeah, it's difficult to say.
Metabolized by all
in our visualizations at the beginning of a service, we say, well, cast your mind into space and see the white light of God. Is that white light of God from the absolute itself, or is it from the sun? Where? But then it's all around anyway. The light, the power of God exists everywhere. There is no, even though they talk about the vacuum of space, there is no real vacuum. That God is there as well. There is nowhere where there isn't God. So you have access to the power of God. You just have to know how to bring it to you. And that is too is a service. If you know how to bring it to you, you tell other people how to do that so that they can advance as well.
Well, I need to lie down now, Michael. So super inspiring. I'm going to have to listen back to this.
Have a quick
just to redigest it.
Have a quick slug of scotch and then go lie down and think about this.
And then do the 12 blessings. Send it out.
Well, yeah, when you wake up and think. do the 12 blessings when you're asleep. So when you wake up, you're doing it and you think, good, I'm advancing. Yeah.
I'm trying. Well, thanks, Michael. It's been super inspiring,
okay,
as always.
Great. Yeah. Where are we? Oh, I see, almost an hour and a half. Well, that's good. That's excellent.
That's a chunky bit of knowledge there sent out.
Yeah, I mean, we've wandered around all over the place, and it's more of a conversation than an instruction. But I hope that people will find it interesting to listen to.
I'm sure.
I know people at the society, or some of the people at the society that have listened to it, have found it interesting. So we'll try to focus on one aspect next time or something.
Definitely, I'd like to do an episode on the Operation Sunbeam. I never realized how my appreciation of it grows every time I read more about it. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, Operation Sunbeam is a very interesting thing, because I think that people have an idea about it, which is not necessarily wrong, but it doesn't fully appreciate exactly what it's doing for us.
Well, let's save that till the next time.
Yes, absolutely.
Leave that little tease there.
Yes. Okay. All right, Jack.
Have
a great time. We'll see you next year. Next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Cheerio.